Hey there, I'm Keith, and in this video we're going over a 2-camera interview setup. I'll go over my cameras, the lenses, the lighting, and everything else in this video, and especially how I position my lights and what those lights look like when they're on and off and how they affect the overall scene. So let's get into the breakdown. All right, we have a 2-camera interview today about Tyler's Joker. We are using the FX6 and the FX30. And both lenses are the Sony Nightwalker lenses. We also have the Freewell Eiger matte box, and we're using a 1/8 glow mist on each of our cameras. And the FX30 also has the VND installed, and I actually am at T2. We're at T2 on the FX30, and I actually had to use a little bit of ND on this matte box to get the image dark enough to be able to film in here, even though we're filming in a really dark garage. A little bit of ND came in really clutch there. Just to be a little extra, I went with the small rig wireless follow focus, and I rigged up this follow focus and a monitor just so I can monitor what's going on. This is a little overkill, but I needed to get a little more hands-on experience with this wireless follow focus, so I decided now is a pretty good time, even though I'm going to be standing right next to the camera. We'll see how this works. More on this a little bit later. For the 2 lenses, we're using the Sony Nightwalker, and I have the 55mm on the FX30, and I'm using the 35mm on the FX6. The FX6 is our wide, and we're getting all of Tyler's bike and a little bit of the bikes in the background, and I'll go over lighting a little bit more in a second, but that's the vibe we're going with for the wide. And you're probably wondering why I'm using a Super 35 lens on a full frame camera. On the FX6, if we use clear image zoom and we zoom into 1.2 times, we'll actually be able to get past the vignetting that comes on the lens. So this is what it looks like. You can probably see it a little better on this monitor. There's a little bit of vignetting on the corners, but if we zoom into 1.2, that's 1.1, and that is 1.2. The vignetting on the edges is actually gone. So the clear image zoom digitally zooms in and crops in on the image, but it doesn't lose any of the 4K resolution. So cropping into 1.2 times isn't that big of a deal. We can also go up to 1.5. but that's just too much, so we're just going to do 1.2 just to get rid of that vignetting. And for the tight shot, we're going with the FX30 with the 55mm, and this is what our shot is going to be looking like. A little bit of the bike on the left side, and Tyler's going to be on the right side here, on this right third. And it's going to be nice because we have a little bit of separation. We see the bike, but we can also see a little bit of his car in the background. What's that car again, Tyler? We can see a little bit of his 1934 Ford back there, so it just gives a little bit of separation and a couple of layers that makes it look a little bit more interesting. For the key light, we actually filmed this once before, and we were matching the windows, and it was daylight when we filmed it last time. So now I'm just using my Godox light panel with a softbox on it, and that's going to be our key, and that's going to be, I might actually dial it down a little bit, but that's what the key light is going to be working with. And I'm going to have him sitting here facing this way, so about half of his face will be lit and then half of his face will be in shadow.
After I'm done enjoying this bike for a year, 5 years, I don't know how long I'm going to have it for. Hope to see it in the museum one day.
And that's where this light comes in, and this is a Godox tube light, and this will be lighting up just a little bit of the shadow side of his face, while also giving us some separation from the background with the bike and all of this nice little chrome right here. See if I can get a test shot. So we'll actually be able to see some separation with all the chrome lights and the background. And for our hair light, we have another Godox tube light rigged up behind, and I'm using a black C-stand here. So hopefully this will just blend into the background, and this is going to not only light up the back edge of the bike here, but we'll also get a little bit of light on top of Tyler because he's like 8 feet tall. We'll be able to get a little bit of light coming down over the Apple box. And we'll get a little bit, he's only 6'4". We'll be able to get a little bit of an edge light, again, separating him from the background. And finally, just for a little bit of accent back here, I have 4 Godox tube lights as well. I think these are all set to 30 degrees at 100% saturation. So again, these just give a little bit of texture to the background and break things up just a little bit. These almost look like they could be shop work lights or something back here in the background. For this shoot, we're also using fog, and this is going to allow us to actually see the light on the fog a little bit better, and again, give us a little bit of a moodier look. We're going to fan this around a little bit, and a little bit of fog goes a long way, especially because we're using those 1/8 mist filters. If we use too much fog, it's just going to look like a completely washed out white image. So if we can waft this around a little bit more, and keep it mostly in the background, because if we get it too much fog between Tyler and the camera, it almost looks like it's just a washed out image. So keeping the fog in the background, if we darken the image a little bit, that's about the frame we're gonna have on the wide. So it just adds a little bit more of visual interest to the background. To quickly go over what all of our lights are doing, let's start by turning off the background lights. And these will just be the lights back here, the 4 lights behind Tyler. So turning those off. It's not really doing a whole lot for lighting Tyler, but it's doing a little bit to add some visual interest to the background. And now for our key light on Tyler. Honestly, this might be a little bit too bright right now, so I may actually dial this one down a little bit. We're at 50% brightness. Sorry to blast you with a ton of light. That's looking a little bit better. You can tell the fog is starting to roll between the camera and Tyler. So right before we start to shoot, I'll actually waft all of that fog back behind Tyler as much as possible. So with our key light dialed down a little bit, this is what it looks like with no key light. And this is what it looks like with the key light. And for the tube that's lighting up Tyler's shadow side, this is what it looks like with that tube light on and off. Again, this is just adding a little bit of light to his shadow side, and it's allowing us to cut those LEDs out of the background and just add a little bit more separation there. Tyler's laughing because this is the 3rd time I had to shoot this one. And for our final tube light, that is the background, and this one's doing a lot of work right now. I might actually turn it down a little bit, but this is what this looks like with the tube light on and off. And as you can see, this is doing a lot to cut out Tyler from the background and give us more separation, especially with that fog. Again, I might actually turn this one down just a little bit. We're currently at 46%. Let's see what something like 30% looks like. Maybe even a little bit less. Yeah, 36 looks pretty good. Out of camera, this is what we're looking like. Now you can see the fog is really rolling in towards us. So let me actually just waft that away really quick, and you can see the difference of what I'm talking about. And here's what it looks like with roughly 200 LEDs turned on. Dude, that actually looks pretty awesome. I wish you could dial them down just a little bit.
Nope, can't do that.
I
started riding motorcycles when I was 23 because I was not allowed to own one growing up. So as soon as I moved out of the house and got my own house, I bought a motorcycle.
When we started filming, the sun was coming through the windows, and I used that to motivate my key light. We originally wanted to showcase him and all of his bikes when we were talking about how he got into riding and more of his introduction. And then when it came to talk about the dedicated Joker, the motorcycle that's behind him, I wanted to move the camera so we can only see that bike, so that was the focus. This is how I typically film on the shadow side, so we can have a little bit more dimension to our subject. Since Tyler had so many bikes in his garage, I framed him between the Joker and the next bike he's working on, with as much of a plain wall in the background as I can get.
People tell me it doesn't run, start it right up, drive it around. Yeah, it's not ideal to drive around, but it starts, runs, all the lights work, and it goes.
If I were to do one thing differently with this shoot, it would be to actually boom my light panel over Tyler's work in progress bike, so that way we'd get more back and side light on him, and that way I could have moved him so we couldn't see the windows at all, because if you look in the shot that we're using, how everything is set up, and I couldn't get my key light any farther back to move him away from the windows, you can see the windows in the background, and there's no daylight coming through them. So our light is no longer motivated and it just looks kind of like a fake scene. For a talking head interview, this isn't the end of the world, but if this was a larger shoot with more people and a bigger budget, I definitely would have rented more lights and been able to actually blast daylight balanced light through those windows. This would have helped our motivated light. It would have looked more natural and it would have fit in more with our footage we filmed earlier in the day. One of my favorite parts of these videos is coming back to the office and looking at my budget, time, gear, and location restrictions and seeing what I could have done better. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, you'll probably like my other breakdown video where I go over how I shot a 2-camera interview setup outdoors without any lights. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Of separation to those, hold on, I can do it. I'm getting in my own head now.